Number 15. Gas chamber. You expect to breathe clean air during your hotel stay. Redditor Chief Kumpf almost ended up gassed. Chief found a hotel in Yangon, Burma, with low rates due to maintenance. No worries, their stay went fine and they headed to breakfast. It was there they discovered their destiny could have been very different. Some German guests they met at breakfast said they'd been moved during the night to a different floor because some levels were being gassed for bugs. According to the Redditor, during the middle of the night, they were just going around the room shoving the gas nozzle or whatever under the doors and letting them run. Wound up taking the lives of 2 people next to the Germans before they realized they'd accidentally booked people on that floor. The fact that it could have so easily been them that the hotel gassed has always stuck with this Redditor. That's perfectly understandable in this situation. Number 14. Children's clothing. As a night auditor, Redditor Local Mojo has a number of stories to share, but one particularly creepy story makes our list. The guest had been acting odd since the beginning. Mojo arrived for his shift, and this crazy guest came down to pace in the lobby and breakfast area aimlessly, talking to himself. He would sit down, stand up, then move to another chair while mumbling. Hours later, he went to his room but returned shortly after to tell Mojo to call an ambulance. He'd said he'd turned on the heater and it made him short of breath. Mojo did as he was bid, and a moment later the fire alarms went off. Firemen arrived and asked if there was anyone in the man's room. Mojo answered no. The strong guest had no others with him. Once the fire had been contained, the firemen set off, and Mojo went to take a look at the damage. The man had moved all the furniture around, putting the TV in the bathroom and a trash can in the center, which is where he lit the fire. Mojo writes, "The thing that troubled me wasn't the fact that the man intentionally set his room on fire and could have possibly burned the hotel down. It was the fact that even though he was alone, he had small children's clothes spread around the room. If that doesn't give you the deepest of chills, I don't know what will." Number 13. Mr. M. Buckle up because this one's a wild ride. Redditor Vote for Betty 31 shares her scary true story originally told by her mother, who used to work as a hotel housekeeper in Washington, D.C. in the 90s. Having come from Vietnam, her mother didn't know much English initially, but she could get by at her job. Due to her lovable nature, she was always sent to clean the rooms of high-profile guests when they were in town, including the Backstreet Boys. One high-profile guest was Mr. M, a pseudonym. He checked into the hotel's priciest suite, and the mom was assigned to clean his room. When she arrived, she found a Do Not Disturb sign hung on the door, so she planned to return later. However, the man stayed at the hotel more than a month, but wouldn't let the staff near his room. Because he had the money and was warm to staff, the red flags were ignored. Soon they'd find out why those flags were waving. At one point, when none of the staff had seen him in a while, they found the Do Not Disturb sign was no longer on the door, although Mr. M hadn't checked out, so the mom was sent to clean his room. When she opened the door, a rank smell hit her square in the face. The place was a pigsty, like someone had thrown a rave, she said. Although no guests had been seen entering Mr. M's room, it seemed as though the man had left without a word to the hotel. The smell was so strong that the housekeeper was looking all over for it and tracked it down in the closet. She opened the door, and a cardboard box was sitting on the floor inside. Although we're all hoping she didn't look inside that box, she unfortunately did, and according to Betty, what she saw scarred her to this day. It was exactly what you thought it was. If you've seen the movie Seven, the head of a young woman. The poor housekeeper screamed, rushed to the elevator, and fainted inside. When she awoke, the hotel was swarming with cops, and as Betty wrote, like a CSI scene. The man wasn't who he said he was. He used a fake credit card to check in, and this poor woman was a call girl. Betty's mom quit the same day, and who can blame her? Number 12. Creepy B&B. Sometimes guests aren't the creepy ones, hosts are. Redditor Ghost Farter wrote of her scary story at a Pennsylvania Airbnb. The place seemed cute, she said, and apart from a display of antique dolls in the lobby, it seemed normal. But once they were in their room, the signs began to appear. There were some scratches on the floor near the bookcase. When they looked closer, they found a secret door. Ghost explains, when I asked the owner, who gave a creepy vibe, if it works, he said yes and showed me that it opened to their office. It had a lock on their side, and if I asked if there was a lock on my side, he smiled and said no. In other words, the hosts could get in, but they couldn't get out. After the Redditor asked for another room, preferably one without a secret concealed entrance that hadn't been disclosed to guests, the host just continued to smile creepily. So instead, the pair blocked the door and got no sleep. What a bizarre thing to put into a hotel room. Number 11. The Bad Room. Redditor, banned from subs, was on a business trip in '99, and his flight had been delayed, making him late for check-in at his hotel by around 5 hours. By that time, they'd given his room away. Being that the business event he was attending was at the hotel, he wasn't having it. Although polite, he was resolute that he'd stay there for that night. After trying to figure something out for their guest, the hotel asked if he would consider staying in a damaged room that was under construction. With no other choice, the Redditor agreed. Bad idea. It was clear something bad had gone down in that room. The red stains on the ceilings and walls had been primed over, but the carpets still had pools of red with tape over them. There was also a number of small holes in the walls, which had been patched and sanded. He describes it better than I can. You could see where the person had been hit and where they fell. You could also see how they tried to get up and where they finally collapsed. Luckily, he only stayed in that room one night, although 1 minute seems too long in my opinion. Number 10. Are you alone? If you think you are absolutely safe in a hotel, think again. Redditor Don't Think shares this absolutely chilling tale about staying in a foreign hotel. She just wrapped up a work event which had sapped her sleep. Needless to say, she was exhausted. So exhausted that despite the rundown state of the motel, she dropped on her damp bed and fell asleep by 8 p.m. The motel phone rang around 11 p.m. It was the front desk calling about a noise complaint. She said she wasn't making any noise and that she'd been sleeping. And here's what they were really after. Don't think right. They asked me if maybe it's someone else in the room, and I tell them nope, I'm here alone. So there's definitely no one else making noise. After verifying again that she was alone, the phone call ended and she fell asleep again. The next time she woke up, she thought about the interaction a bit more and wondered why the motel staff had called, because there was no noise around her. She also wondered about the need to confirm that she was alone repeatedly. She later discovered they never called at all. That means someone had called her room to see if she was alone. For what reason, we can only guess. She writes, I've never been so glad to always use the extra latch chain lock. If she hadn't, who knows what might have happened. Number 9. Serious about partying. An anonymous Redditor shared this unbelievable tale of a hotel guest who was serious about partying. The Redditor worked the front desk at the Marriott when a group of high schoolers heading to a nearby ski resort checked in. He called these instances complete chaos, as 4 high school seniors per each 140 rooms meant a wild party weekend. The Redditor describes the scariest incident that happened when a young man OD'd in the hallway. The Redditor writes, he had no pulse and needed to be defibrillated back to life. After being taken to the hospital, he came back that same night to his friends all in the lobby and shouted, "Who's ready for shots?" Guess party guy didn't learn his lesson the first time, but high schoolers have 9 lives, right? Something tells me I may be wrong. Number 8. The Creeper. Imagine what creepy guests you might encounter as a housekeeper in a hotel. Redditor Wild Violet doesn't have to imagine it. She worked at a Super 8, whose housekeeping staff was just her and her sister-in-law. They each had a floor to themselves and shared the second floor. Our friend was cleaning rooms on the second floor, of which she had around 20 to cover, when this creep walked up behind her to head towards the stairs, leering the whole way. When she'd assumed he'd just gone down the stairs, she headed to the storage room to pick up some more supplies. In order to get there, she had to pass those same stairs. She writes, "There's the creep standing there on the top steps, staring at me and acting like he's blocking the stairs." Well, she says she should have locked herself in a room and called for help. The instinct to flee kicked in, so she raced down to the end of the hall towards some side stairs. As she arrived at the first floor, the leering creep was approaching her. She raced past him, shouting out her sister-in-law's name until he bolted out of a side door. But that wasn't the end of her saga. Wild Violet writes, "A few hours later, as I was finishing my last rooms, I heard someone down the hall, so I looked there and there he was standing at his door just staring at me. The thought makes you shudder." Although he finally left to his own room, our friend called her sister-in-law for backup, and they remained together until she finished the floor. Everyone should have a backup. It might have saved her life in this case. Number 7. Anonymous bikers. Bikers often get a bad rap, but sometimes they save the day. That's what happened for Redditor Sweet Rhyme Pure Reason when she was 12 on a road trip with her mom. In the middle of nowhere, Texas, they stopped at a super cheap motel with a semi-decent rating, probably a fake rating from the sounds of their experience. Halfway through the night, the manager knocked on the door and told them to get out because he booked the room for another guest. While the Redditor gathered their things, her mom was outside arguing with the manager. That's when he started shouting. Shouldn't have done that because he alerted other guests to the situation, and these weren't ones you'd ever want to confront. The Redditor writes, "I looked out the window and saw about half a dozen bikers in vests appear out of nowhere and start confronting the owner. Of course, the mom didn't want to be involved in all this in case things got ugly, so she rushed inside while the bikers began telling off the owner, telling him these guests had already paid and would like to stay the night and he'd better not do anything like this again. The owner backed down fast and then everyone dispersed. The mother-daughter pair didn't sleep well after all the drama that night, but they checked out the next day without incident. The Redditor gives us a worthy shout out to their saviors that night. In this case, it appeared they saved the day. Number 6. Do you wear thigh highs? Redditor Tay Beezy shares a super creepy story from her work as a receptionist. At a popular mid-tier hotel in the South, she worked the evening shift and of course often got calls from people wanting to make a reservation. One of these calls came from an older man who said he worked at the Haynes Company. The man was checking on his reservation, but it didn't come up in the system. He then asked whether or not hotel guests could have packages shipped to them while there. Although Tay thought that was the end of it, 2 weeks passed and the Haynes man called back. His voice was weird that time. She describes it as super soft voice with almost shallow breathing. He claimed to be checking on his reservation again, but it still wasn't in the system, so she offered to make it for him, but he cut her off. She writes, and then even more shallow breathing, and the creepiest, softest voice asks, "Do you wear thigh highs?" Tay hung up the phone and locked the doors, and I bet she never wanted to answer that phone again. Number 5. The unwanted guest. Sometimes the scariest things in a hotel is not the staff, not the guests, but the unwanted critters who've managed to scuttle their way into the night. Redditor Crowman shares his story of a scary stay in San Juan del Sur, Nicaragua, one complete with huge spiders and scorpions in the bed. He writes, "I'm sitting at the bar drinking and chatting with a mate. Feel a tickle on the back of my neck and I think it's a mosquito or something. Brush the back of my neck and another scorpion, this time way bigger, plops on the ground at my feet. What did he do? He simply stared at it, squished it to smithereens after squealing, and kept right on drinking. I'd be out the door in a heartbeat if that happened to me." Number 4. On fire. If you think you have a strange hotel story abroad, think again. Redditor Never Penniless tells of his strange 2 a.m. arrival at an isolated coastal hotel in southern Turkey. Already off to a strange start, but then he pulled up to his destination. To put it simply, the hotel was on fire. The owner was standing outside of the building and was excited to see his new guest when the Redditor mentioned that the hotel was on fire. The Redditor said it was just a small fire and ushered him inside. The Redditor bypassed firefighters as they did their job, stepped over hoses, and rushed through smoke, while the owner told him that the fire was only on one side of the hotel and that the second floor landing was fine. They entered his room, which was indeed absent of fire, and he passed out before he could think. He writes, "In the morning I awake alive wondering if I've dreamt the entire thing." But he didn't. In fact, he had breakfast with the hotel owner after examining the charred stairs on the far side of the hotel, and when he returned several years later, the hotel had recovered. Bizarre, but also a great travel story. Number 3. The Hotel Guest. Ever stayed in a haunted hotel? Redditor Army of Wombles worked at one. The Scottish hotel had separate ground floor level buildings. He was told to bring a bottle to one of the guest room as a pair of sisters had arrived for check-in. So he got the tray ready, 2 glasses, a bottle, and headed across the courtyard to the main building. But as he turned down the corridor towards the bedrooms, he saw something that stopped him in his tracks. He writes, "I'd been told the stories about the hotel ghost, apparently an old woman in gray who'd taken her life. I was therefore perturbed to see a headless figure in faded Victorian dress shuffling away from me down the corridor in complete silence. Knowing there was no other staff in the building, he almost dropped his tray as he exclaimed, which alerted the figure enough for it to turn around, and it just so happened it was one of the sister guests, who was just so severely bent over from osteoporosis that her head fell below her shoulders." Talk about a big misunderstanding. Number 2. 911. When your hotel guest dials 911, you expect the worst. But Redditor Nubosis encountered something even creepier. The Redditor once worked for an old 20-room mansion hotel. Right off the bat, it sounds creepy. Although he'd heard ghost stories about the place, he never personally encountered the supernatural. That is, until one night, certain guests made him question things. The couple who checked in were perfectly lovely and friendly. Around midnight, the room they were in dialed 911. Our friend Nubosis saw the call on his switchboard, and being the hotel's only employee, he had to go investigate the matter. The man was older, so he feared health problems. He went to knock on the door, which crept open a bit after a time. The room was pitch black, the curtains were closed, no lights at all, so Nubosis couldn't see the guest. But soon he heard the cackling whisper of the man, which he described straight out of a horror movie. When he asked if the man had dialed 911, the guy replied with a question in a creepy voice, "Who are you?" After explaining that he was the man who checked him in at the front desk, the man claimed while giggling that they didn't have a phone. Next, he said they meant to call 411, then he shut the door. The following morning, the pair came down into the lobby acting completely normal. Don't know if he was on something or not. My money's on paranormal possession of some kind. Before we get to number 1, my name is Chills and I hope you're enjoying my narration. If you're curious about what I look like in real life, then go to my Instagram at DylanIsChillinYT and tap that follow button to find out. It's a proven fact that generosity makes you a happier person, so if you're generous enough to hit that subscribe button and the bell beside it, then thank you. This way, you'll be notified of the new video we upload every Tuesday. Number 1. Alone in Life. Redditor Captain Cabbage was not actually a guest, but a hotel employee who worked the night shift at a hotel situated right off the highway near a city. One night, a guy who looked incredibly tired came in and booked a room without breakfast and refused a city map. It also appeared as though he didn't have any spare clothes, and despite only booking one night, he asked if the rooms were made up daily. Captain Cabbage wrote, "In hindsight, all of those things were somewhat significant as an indicator for what he was thinking at the time and what happened next. What happened next was chilling." All through the night, nothing seemed off, but the next morning, as guests checked out and time ticked closer to the checkout time at 10 a.m., the lone guest didn't appear. He hadn't given notice about wanting a late checkout either, so the head housekeeper knocked on his door to no avail. After a few attempts to get the guest to answer, Captain Cabbage entered the room with his master key announcing his entry, still to no avail. They found the man in bed, his blankets up high, just laying stiff. The man had passed away that night. Because the man had no family to find him at home, he'd chosen a cheap highway hotel to pass in so that people would find him. Captain writes, "It was creepy, but it was also really sad. No one should be that alone in life. No truer words have ever been reddited." Thanks for checking out this video. Be sure to subscribe because we upload new countdowns every Tuesday and Saturday. Or if you're still not convinced, here are some of our other videos that I think you'd like. Enjoy!